The Trump administration taking a victory lap for phase one of the trade deal with China. Hadley Gamble spoke with Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin over the weekend in a CNBC exclusive interview.
The deal will be signed in early January, and then we'll start phase two. And phase two may be 2A, 2B, 2C. We'll see. But this into itself is a huge accomplishment for the president.
What do you say to those critics who complain that this phase one didn't accomplish anything, really?
Well, in all fairness, people are just beginning to understand the details of phase one. We're in the process of putting out fact sheets that go through what it is. You know, this has been a long process over the last 2 years, and people have seen the ups and downs. So I think it's going to take a little bit of time for people to digest the significance of this.
All right, joining us right now to talk about the significance of the deal is Kevin Rudd. He is the former Australian Prime Minister and the president of the Asia Society Policy Institute. And Kevin, it's good to see you today.
Good to be with you.
So here we are, the day after those additional tariffs were set to be put on. It sounds like we have a deal. Not sure what's in the deal, but we know that additional tariffs aren't coming at this point. Wall Street sees that as a détente, and futures have been up as a result. What do you think really happened behind the scenes? What's in this deal, and what needs to happen next?
Look, Becky, I think the bottom line is we've now got a ceasefire. And this trade war has been raging for a year and a half now. And a ceasefire, which is no new tariffs, that's good news for markets. And the second is on some of the existing tariffs, there's been a reduction as well. So in terms of doing no further damage to the global economy and to the US economy, and to the Chinese economy, that actually is on the upside. But your question is right. On the substance of the agreement, look, there is some advances in terms of forced technology transfer and intellectual property protection, market access into the financial sector. But we've got an 86-page document yet which still hasn't been translated, and we don't see all the gory detail. We have to wait for that.
What would be the upside, the downside of these, the gory details, as you put it? What would be good news if you're sorting through that stuff, and what would be bad news?
Well, look, if you're looking at it from an American exporter's perspective, President Trump and Bob Lighthizer have been pretty hard line with the Chinese in trying to extract, let's call it, a purchasing order of American goods and services in manufacturing and agriculture and in other sectors of the US economy over the next 2 years. The number which the American side is putting out is $200 billion worth of additional export sales by the United States to China over the next 2 years, using the 2017 benchmark as the way you calculate that. Now, if you're in American agriculture and those sort of sectors, assuming these numbers are reflected in the actual detailed document to be released, that's good news for the American Farm Belt. As for the other parts of the agreement, which is on intellectual property protection and forced technology transfer, market access to hitherto closed parts of the American economy, look, it's still too difficult to see what material progress has been made, but I'll give Bob Lighthizer one thing. There's a dispute resolution mechanism built into this draft agreement, and that, I think, would have been what the Chinese pushed hardest against, and Bob Lighthizer, I think, has got a win there.
Do you anticipate that there will be a phase two that takes place before the election, or does everything else at this point get pushed off until later next year and beyond?
You know, Becky, what's fascinating is to look at the different scripts being used in Beijing and Washington on this core question of what about the phase two negotiations. The American side have been very plain in saying that as soon as this thing is done and dusted, that's the phase one deal, then they'll be at it again in January to recommence the negotiations for phase two. The Chinese side have said something quite different. They've said, well, we intend to wait for the full implementation of the phase one agreement before we look at phase two. Now, why is that the case? The real stumbling block in all these negotiations over time has been this, and that is China's own domestic subsidies to its own firms in what they how they operate in the international marketplace, whether it's Huawei or others. And then that lies so much at the absolute center of the Chinese economic model that the Chinese are going to resist a whole lot any attempt by the US side to rein those subsidies in to create more of a global level playing field.